My spiritual upbringing, when I was young, I used to always go to church, with my parents, my brother and my sister every Sunday. When I was young, it was always a routine thing, and until I was one Wednesday evening at my youth group, we were praise and worshiping, and I was just, talking to God, just worshiping Him, praying, and just asking Him just forgive me, and just want to, take my life onto another level, and not just, just living in my sinful life. And in that moment, that evening, that's when I felt the Holy Spirit, and that night, God just took over my life. And that was I think that was my senior year of high school. And since then, I've been trying to live the life, God called me to live. The game of football, with football, you're not gonna always be perfect on every snap, and I just know that God is working behind the scenes. I know that I have to be playing for Him, and, not just, not for my coaches, not for the fans. At the end of the day, it's about playing for Him. I think having that kind of mentality, God can take care of the rest, and, great things can happen after that. To have guys, that have a strive, for living righteous for God on the team, I think that's huge, because, if not to have something like that on the team, I think it can be very difficult, especially being with, among, a lot of people that are on the team that are unbelievers. You can sometimes, get off track of what, God calls you to do, and then having people that are on the team that, are trying to live right, I think that helps in a huge way, because you can go to them if you find yourself struggling, because they can relate, because they're doing the same things we're doing every day. I had the opportunity to lead a Bible study during the summer, for the guys in my recruiting class, and I think that was huge. Before actually doing that, I never thought I actually lead a Bible study. Somebody said that that's something that I probably have to do to take that next step in my my walk with God. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can do that, because I'm not somebody that is a big talker. But after going through it, after going through that experience, it was great. It was something that I knew it was right, because I was doing it for God. Trying to have an impact, in my teammates' lives. That's something that is important to me. Something I want to add is that it's trying to live this this righteous walk with God. It's not going to be perfect, but God has set us free from this sinful life that we was in before we met Christ. And that's something I just always want to share to people, is that this good life this world portrays to us through the media and movies and all that, it's not the good life. And the good life is in His Word. Having a team chaplain like Johnny, it means it's a lot. It's big for the team, because without him, sometimes it's like who do we go to if we need help or some spiritual guidance? Having Johnny on the team is big for us. After this, my college years are over. Something I always thought about was like, man, maybe God has something greater for me, playing football. Even though don't get me wrong, I love the game of football, but at the end of the day, I always say, like, it's about doing what God called me to do. Maybe he's spreading His word to people outside of football, not just football. But if I do ever had the opportunity to play in the NFL, that's something that I would take, because that's a huge blessing, and I can impact people's lives through the NFL.